Everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition. And today we are going to talk about our problems. And why do we have so many when we're in our human existence? And what is the root cause of the problem? So this came up for me. I was out and about the other day and I heard someone say that, if only I could solve all my problems, or something to that effect. And it makes us really start to think about, why do we have problems? Well, do we really have problems, or do we look at it as a problem? And what causes us to look at it that way? In my experience, as we go through ascension, we start to realize that we really don't have problems. We have a program that's causing us to create the situation. We're having a program that's causing us to view the situation a certain way that we don't like. We have a program that's causing us to not get out of the situation. And that's what we're viewing as our problems. But since we created the problem through our own human programming, it's kind of like we did it to ourselves, right? But no one likes to hear you did it to yourself, especially when you're in the middle of it. That is the one thing that people will say, and that's the one thing you never want to hear, Yeah, I created it. That doesn't make me feel better about it, in a sense. And there are times maybe that will make us feel better if someone says that, oh, well, you created it. But very rarely when you're in the middle does that shit feel better. So if we start to break it down and we really start to look at it, everything we're viewing as a problem, it's just, we can kind of boil it down to, we just don't like the situation. We don't like how it's unfolding. We don't like our human, let's even preface it longer than that, our human does not like it. We don't like the way it's coming about. We don't like how people aren't doing what we want them to do. That's mostly the biggest one about a problem that we think we have, is we don't like the way others are acting in the program. There's a rule about photosynthesis, and the rule on photosynthesis is it follows the path of the most efficient, right? That's how photosynthesis works. It goes the most efficient path. That's how energy works. That's how everything works. So when our soul starts taking us on our journeys, it's following the most efficient path to get to what we want. From a soul perspective, it might not be the most logical path, and your human's not going to look at it and go, "Oh, this is so efficient." But you're using the least amount of energy, in a sense, to get there, and it's getting you through it the quickest way. And it's not meandering you around. It's not causing you to circle the drain, in a sense, for years and decades on end. It's trying to get you through things the quickest. And that's why when we start really getting to our ascension and following those breadcrumbs and following the most efficient path, even if it doesn't feel like that it's the most efficient path, we start following that. We start to understand that, yeah, this doesn't make a lot of sense that I would have to go this way, but when I look back on it, I'll understand why. It was the quickest way. And that's really, ascension is the most conscious way. It is our conscious way of clearing a program. Our conscious way of working through everything, doing it on a conscious level. That's really what ascension is, working through our human programming consciously, understanding, transcending it, looking at it differently. So when we're in our human consciousness and we still see it as a problem, we really have to start working. When you still see it that way, in our human consciousness, we're going to see it that way. We don't have the consciousness to see it as, oh, I created it, let's break it down. When we can start to do that is probably, to me, when you get farther into ascension, even awakening. I feel like we just get frustrated with everything in awakening. We just want out. We really don't even care what's behind the door. We just don't want to be where we are anymore, because the whole human realities just feel worthless to us for whatever reason. Either we got everything we wanted and we're still not happy, or we thought we got everything we wanted and it all fell apart. It's just we want out. We don't even care what's on the other side. We just want out. Until we get deeper into ascension, then we kind of want back in, because as everything gets stripped away from our human life, because it all has to go, because it's all tainted with human programming, and that's how it all got created, everything starts to get magnified, and you start to notice, this isn't the frequency I'm at anymore. And even if we don't see it like that, all of a sudden things I used to enjoy, I don't like anymore. People I used to like, I like to spend time with, I don't enjoy that anymore. I don't feel the same way about certain things anymore. I'm not the same person anymore. And that's a hard one for people around us, when we're just not the same person, because we're now our higher aspects. And no matter how many of them you've embodied, you're still shifting enough for people to start to notice after a while. and you start to look at things differently. You start to look at other people's human problems differently, and that gives you a different level of insight on how they can be transcended, how they can be shifted, right? The issue we have is a lot of people who are still in that human programming, they don't want to hear that. There's a lot of victim in human programming, and we had the same thing. When we're in the deepest of it, we're clearing a lot of victim energy about it, even though we created the whole thing, right? And I keep going back to that because it is something after a while we start to accept. When we're in our human consciousness, we don't accept that. But once you start to pull your programs apart and usually you can get to the program if you start to pull the problem apart, right? Pull the problem apart and see what is really the problem here. Is it I don't like where I am? Am I holding on to something too tight? Like I said, 9 out of 10 times it's people aren't doing what I want them to do. That's the root of most human problems. We don't even see it as ourselves. We don't see how we're contributing to it. We just see it as, hey, people aren't doing what I want them to do. So we don't reverse it and say, but why do I want them to do that? That's where kind of the program, that's where the gold is. Why do I want them to do it this way? Why do I want them to act this way? Why do I want this to happen this way? You know, can I feel different about that? You know, can I feel, can I change my mind on that? You know, what's holding me here? Why am I holding myself here? Pulling apart what the core of the problem is, you're always going to get to one glaring ending. And that's going to be we're the problem. We don't like to hear that. And that's not what you're going to learn in, you know, most therapy sessions in a sense. And maybe you will in some human therapy sessions, but we are the problem. We caused it. We're letting it go on. We're believing whatever it is that is making us stay there. And that's our own consciousness telling us, no, our human conscious saying, no, you have to stay here. You can't leave the situation because all these bad things are going to happen. We get so conditioned to not look at what's really going on and what we created. If you are really into the simulation theory, which Ascension to me really kind of brings that theory to the forefront. You know, it's all a simulation. We're just participating in it, but we're doing the simulation for ourselves. You know, we're the ones that are doing that simulation. Now, it doesn't really matter if you're participating in it. If it's a simulation, not particularly. It doesn't matter when you're dreaming. There are different simulations of different realities of what we're doing, but it doesn't really matter. So no matter where you set on the simulation theory, it gets a lot more, I think it gets a lot more traction lately because people are starting to see different dimensions shifting. They're starting to see glimpses into different dimensions. You're starting to see things bleed over. You're starting to see human consciousness trying to, you know, make sense of it all. You're starting to see human consciousness putting more bows around things and understanding a lot of things that it kind of dismissed before. So if we can get down to the root of the problem, it's going to be us. I'm gonna spoil it and skip to the end. It's gonna be us. How we perceive it, why we don't want to leave it, why we don't like it. You know, a lot of ascension, some of our biggest problems come with ascension because we don't like the process of ascension. We don't like the way we have to get stripped down to having nothing. Okay? So because if we don't, we're still in that human consciousness of these things matter. So we don't have any of these things. We can't attach an identity to them. We can't get any enjoyment in a sense out of them. We can't use them to identify us anymore, and you kind of get stripped down to just yourself, right? Stripped down to just what's left. Your soul, yourself, your aspects of you. Why we create things, why we don't create some things. That we don't understand why didn't I create that for me? Why wouldn't I have wanted, you know, a lot of people are kind of looking for that one thing, whether it be that one love, that perfect job, you know, all the money in the world, you know, all the human consciousness things we're programmed to say, now that's what we want, right? That's what I want all those things. Even sometimes it's just people who understand you, you know, or you want to be around people. And when we're in a lot of these human, I have to have it all these ways, or this is not the way it's supposed to look, or this is not how it's supposed to sound, or I don't like how this is happening. That's where ascension starts to really kind of it's kind of like the mind fuck of ascension in a sense. And that's what happens because It comes in different ways. We have to accept things we don't want to accept. We have to be able to understand things we didn't think we'd ever be able to understand. But when you're looking at it from a different consciousness, you're going to be shocked how easily it is to understand it and understand why it's had to play out that way. Understand why we're kind of in this place where you can look at someone else's issue and go, well, I can see how they got created. And a lot of times it's harder for us because we have emotions around it when we're looking at our own stuff, right? We have so many emotions around it. And that goes whether you're still setting in the fourth dimension and doing more, readings with people and why people might search out other people because you have more insight. We only have more insight because we don't have the emotions around the issue. Right? That's why you have more insight. And the more conscious you are, it is true, the more insight you have. I mean, that's just how it is. Do I believe there's people who come in more aware than others? Yes. I do believe there are people who just come in a little more aware. Doesn't mean they're more conscious. They just have maybe a little more awareness. They're not as deep asleep as some other people are. But even if you go to those people and ask them, well, what do you think about this? And they tell you, if it's not something we want to hear, we're not going to listen to it anyways, so it doesn't matter. We throw that out immediately. Because we don't like the answers of, we need to shift something. Your human's never going to shift something on its own. It always has to be shifted out. Think about every situation you were kind of in. How many times did you shift out of it yourself? Or were you shifted out? Our human is usually pushed out of it. We're pushed out of it because we've outgrown it. Our frequency is outgrown it. It's time to go do something else. I've done tons of videos on here about how our frequency shifts our reality inside out, right? Now, sometimes we can be shifting so much inside, it takes a while for us to see the outside shift, and that's frustrating when we're in ascension. Why does it take so long? How come it takes so long for us to get to this place? Why does it take so long for us to see it differently? Why does it take so long for us to be somewhere else, in a sense, in a different reality, in a different space? We have so much to work through that's made that reality solid in front of us, that to start to shift it, we start to see the time it takes to do that. How much we have to go through, how much we have to purge, how much we have to transcend within ourselves, how we have to stop looking at everything as a problem. You won't have problems when you get to certain spaces in ascension. You don't even really use the word. It's a program that's making you look at it like this is the problem. It's only a problem because I don't want to I don't want to transcend the program. That's why now I have a problem, because I don't want to accept that this is how it is with certain maybe people around. They're not going to shift right now, and I have to move on without them. That normally solves 99% of the problems we think we have is our attachment to people and our attachment to people and our financial security. And those are the things that you will find that shift the most in ascension, because those are the things we don't want to shift ourselves. So ascension pushes you to shift them, or it just takes them away. Because as a human, we value other people's opinions over ours. We value our human beliefs over ascended beliefs. When we're in certain parts of our ascension, we still cling to a lot of those human beliefs, and we don't even know that's what we're doing. We don't even realize we're looking at our human beliefs as some kind of, I'm going to use the word Bible here. I very rarely ever use that word, but it's something to really go by. These human beliefs, they really make sense, and this is how we want to live. And when you look at how screwed up the human realities get, we almost laugh at the fact we ever looked at this and go, yeah, that sounded like a good idea at the time. Boy, that sounded like that was exactly how we wanted to go. It's kind of weird how that turned out. It sounded so good at the time. And we look back at this stuff now and we're like, oh my God, what an awful idea that was. Why did I ever conform to that? Because human realities are conformity. And even when we get into some different versions of fourth dimensional spiritual realities, there's still conformity. Even non-conformity becomes conformity in a lot of the human realities and some of the fourth dimensional realities when we're starting that transition over. So it can be decades, years, a decade, before we can really get to certain parts of our awakening and our ascension. And depending on how fast you're going, some people just move faster than others because of how much time they allowed themselves to ascend. Like I said, it's all been pre-planned out. And if it's not someone's time, it doesn't matter what you do, they're not going to shift. And if it is someone's time, you'll be surprised at the little thing that gets them to shift. You know, it can be just the minorest thing, and all of a sudden you start to see these huge shifts because it was their time. So next time you feel like you have a problem, whether you're in your, and you usually, like I said, we're working through a lot of stuff when we get there, like, oh, this feels like a problem. Look at what's feeding it. Why do we look at it that way? Start to break it down. How did we get here? What's going on? What's going on here? And why do we not want to leave here? What's the loss of if we leave here? Normally everything we get stuck in is there's a loss of if we leave here. It's a loss if we speak up. There's a loss involved. Our human doesn't like a loss. You know, it's such a bad connotation even in human realities, right? No one likes to lose. I mean, that's the pits, right? There'll only be one winner. I don't know, what was that movie? Oh, I can't remember what movie it was. There was that scene. I can't remember what it was. It was something like that. It's only first place. There's no second place. It's only the one person that wins. So you're human and wants to win. And if it doesn't categorize it as a win, it categorizes it as a loss. There's no second place. You know, there's no honorable mentions. Even though our human realities are sometimes try to paint things as that. Or it was a moral victory. There are no moral victories in Ascension. There's just consciousness and not conscious. That's it. You're conscious or you're not. And you might be conscious at some points and not conscious at other points for a lot of the beginning parts of your awakening and your ascension process. Until you get to a certain place where you can maintain that consciousness. But once you get there, you start to see that there are no more you will drop the word problem from your vocabulary. It was not actually shocking for me to hear someone say it because I don't think I've used that word in so long or even thought about anything. It's just, to me, it's a reality that I created. Why did I create it? Is it time to shift it? What's it showing me? Why do I not like it? Is it just uncomfortable what it's showing me? And that's another one. Sometimes it's just uncomfortable. We don't like what it's showing us. It's almost like, oh crap, I can't even think of the movie now. Oh my gosh. Scrooge. That's not what it's originally called, but okay, we're just going to go with Scrooge. You know, he didn't like what he was being shown. How he had acted, what he had done, what he was doing now. You know, no one likes to have to look at that and what we're doing. And being shown what we're doing. And really kind of see it through other people. And that's when we talk about the aspects of us showing us how we've acted, how we're acting now, how we used to act. We have to see it because unless you see the external, you don't really register that as, oh my gosh, that's me. That was me. That's how I used to act. This is karma, my karma coming back from when I did that because I remember doing that. Everything we see we don't like, our human's not going to like, or we're going to look at it and get like, oh, that wasn't very conscious. We'll look back and say, oh, I remember when I did that. I can always know when I'm getting some kind of karmic, either I'm clearing out the karmic timeline from when I started, when I did that act, whatever that act was at the time, and when I remember it years later or months later, or sometimes when you get certain parts of Ascension, it's a lot quicker than that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm finally finishing out that timeline I created when I did that one thing. And you'll know because you just think back at that moment, and it comes out of nowhere. You know, it's also part of clearing the Akash. But to me, it's all, you're wrapping it up. You cleared it. I finally cleared when I did that one thing. That's when we become very conscious about what we do. Because we know what we're creating. And you see what other people are creating, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to be in a reality with someone that's creating that. Because we do take on other people's karma when we share their reality. And it doesn't, I don't mean someone you meet at the store for 2 minutes, but when you're with people and you're creating a reality together, you are taking on their karma in a sense. And that's why we're really conscious about what we surround ourselves with and who we surround ourselves with. Because after you get to a certain point, you know, there are some people you know you're supposed to assist to a certain point, and only you're going to know who that is and how long that is. There will be other people, you know, you don't have to stay around for that. You know, they have a lot of years to go through clearing, and you don't have to be there for that. So I'm going to try to keep this one a little shorter today. Okay. I'm going to try to do more lives this year on YouTube. I'm going to be live with Marissa Indigo Soul. I'll post a link in the community section. I think we're going to go on next Wednesday. I'm going to mention it here because I don't know if I'll do another video before I'm on that show. So anyway, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.